All right, 8th grade, here we go. Chapter 11 is the last chapter. So we're going to kind of work through this at your own pace. Make sure you're listening. Yes, smile at your teacher. You are listening. And we're going to work through so you can get these all done and make sure you're understanding what we're doing before we take the final. So, first thing we need to go over is vocabulary. You are doing dividing polynomials with this. And so we're going to work through the vocabulary of a division problem. There's 3 types of things. We have a dividend, a divisor, and a quotient. So the quotient, we all know, got to get a pen up here. The quotient, we all know, is the answer. So in this case, my quotient is 6. So what I like to think of is my dividend is on the inside. So that would be 300x. And my divisor is out knocking on the door. All right, so that's my 50x. So when I use that terminology as we're going through this, you need to be aware of what those are. There are 3 different ways to divide polynomials. These are the 4 different ways that you're going to see them written. When we are dividing by a monomial, remember that's one term, I prefer seeing it written this way. When we are dividing by a binomial or trinomial, I prefer to see it written this way. But just so you can be aware, these are all saying the exact same thing, except this one has an x on it in 2 places and it doesn't in others. There should be an x here. There should be an x here. So these are all saying the same thing. They're just written 4 different ways. Okay. So there are 4 methods of how to divide this. And what you're going to do is you're going to split it up. So basically, I am going to do my 4x to the 3rd divided by 2x plus 8x squared divided by 2x plus 10x divided by 2x. Sorry, I don't have a pen, so I'm writing with my finger, and so it looks lovely. All right, now we need to reduce. So 4 divided by 2, well, that's 2. I can cancel out my x's because remember 3 is on the top and 1 on the bottom. So I subtract and I get 2 left. Plus 8 divided by 2 is 4. And I cancel out my x's with just 1 left. And 10 divided by 2 is 5. And my x's completely cancel out on that last one. So this is my answer to the first problem. Okay, so if I'm working on the second one, since it's a -2, I have to make sure that that is distributed to each place. Plus 4x squared divided by a -2x plus 12x divided by a -2. All right, so 10 divided by -2, that would give me 5, and then my x's go down to squared. And then my 4's, that would be a -2x. And then 12 divided by -2 is a -6. And, oops, I forgot the x down there. And then my x's cancel out there. So that is all I'm doing with these. Okay, and here, this is just written a different way, so it's the same type of problem. I want to sit there and say, okay, how many times does 2 go into 4? So I say 2 goes into 4 2 times. Well, then remember when I'm dividing my exponents, I have to subtract. So x to the 3rd minus x to the 1st is actually going to be x to the 2nd. Then I'm going to go ahead and put that plus sign in there because that's what is next because it's going to be a positive number. So then I say, okay, well, how many times does 2x go into 8x squared? Well, that's going to be 4 times. I subtract my exponents, so it's just x. And how many times does 2x go into 10x? Well, that's going to be, oops, plus 5. Okay, so same thing on this next one. And so how many times does 4 go into 12? Well, that's going to be 3. Subtract your exponents, x to the 3rd. Minus, how many times does 4 go into 16? That's 4. Subtract your exponents, x squared. How many times does 4 go into 20? That's going to be 5. Subtract your exponents, and that one's just going to be x. And for our last one, -2 into 10, that would be a -5. X, and I subtract it, that's to the 3rd. -8 and a -2 would be a positive 4. X squared. And then -2 into 4 would be a -2x. So that's just a basic division of a monomial. With long division, we have remainders, okay? And so we're going to also, sometimes it doesn't always work out. And so we're going to have fractions left as the remainder. So we're going to write remainders as a fraction with the divisor knocking on the door on the bottom. Okay, so here we go. So 2x into 4x goes in 2 times, and that would give me x squared. Now, I am actually going to do some long division here. So 2 times 2 is going to be 4x, and then that's going to be 2 times, or x squared times x is going to be to the third. And remember, just long division, we subtract. That cancels. Perfect. So we bring down whatever's left. So negative 14x squared plus 3. Oops, sorry about that. So 2 goes into 14x, 2x goes into 14x squared. That would be plus 7. Negative 14, that would be minus 7x. So negative 7 plus 2 is a negative 14 because this is subtraction, which means I have to do minus this, which I tick, tick, and those cancel. Perfect. That's what I want. Now I'm left with plus 3. Well, 2x has an x and 3 doesn't. So since that it would be my remainder, I'm going to do plus 3 over my divisor, which would be 2x. Okay? We're going to move to the next one. So this one just has x. How many times does x go in x to the 5th? Well, it's going to go in, if I subtract it out, it's going to go in 5 times, right? So that would be x to the 4th, sorry, because 4 times 1 is 5. So I minus x to the 5th, those cancel, great, bring down everything else. So then x goes into 2x to the 4th plus, that would be 2x times. So 2x times x is 2x squared. So I subtract those and it cancels. Perfect. And I bring down my 5. X goes into 5. It doesn't. So that becomes plus, I don't like this plus sign. There we go. So that becomes plus 5 over x. So that is my answer for this division problem. My handwriting is horrible in this. Holy moly. All right. Long division with polynomials requires putting things in order. Put terms in descending order. With constants last. Keep the sign immediately before each term when moving the terms around. Okay, so we're just rearranging here. So I want to look for the highest exponent first. So that highest exponent is x to the 3rd. But since it has that negative in front of it, I just have to move it around. Negative x to the 3rd plus x squared plus 5x plus 4. My constant is then last. I'm going to have to use a different color because I'm going to have to go down here. So that would be 3x squared minus 9x plus 1. Moving on down, that would be a negative 2x squared plus 5x plus 7. And finally, down here, negative 2x plus 4. Easy enough. We've done that before. This is just a reminder. Okay, so when writing terms in order, sometimes we need to insert missing terms with a 0 coefficient. 0 terms serve as a placeholder, which we need for long division. Okay, so you see how it didn't have anything to the second power, so we added a 0 here. We added a 0 here. We added a 0 here. So when I look at the first problem, I'm going to start with my 4x to the 4th. Do I have anything to the third power? Well, that would be a negative. So we're going to do plus 0x to the 3rd plus x squared plus 5x minus 2. Now I work my exponents then go all the way down to, I've got to the fourth, to the third, to the second, to the first, and then to the 0 power with my constant. This next one would be 4x squared plus 0x plus 10. And then finally, I've got 4x to the fourth plus 0x to the third minus 5x squared, and I'm going to run out of room, minus 3. Okay. Now the reason we do that is because we have to make sure division works its way down, otherwise my variables don't cancel. So when I'm doing long division now, I have a binomial, not just a monomial. So we're going to start with this. So this goes on the inside. So x squared plus 2x minus 3. That is my dividend because it's in, and then the divisor goes first. Okay, so what I'm looking at here is my x minus 1, and how many times does that go here? Well, what can I multiply by this to give me that? So I can multiply by x, so x times x, that gives me x squared. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's do x first. So x times x is x squared. But then x times a negative 1 is a negative 1x. So I'm going to now subtract. Now be careful because you have to watch the second sign. If I subtract x squared minus x squared, that cancels, right? But then I have to subtract a negative 1, which actually means I add the negative 1. So that becomes 3x minus 3. So now I look at my x again, and how do I get x into 3x? Well, that is going to be plus 3. Okay, so 3 times 3, that's 3x. 3 times a negative 1, that's a negative 3. Both of those cancel, so I don't have any remainders. Now, you can take this back out and FOIL. If I could FOIL this out, you will see that this is my FOILed answer. Amazing. Blow your mind. Okay, let's see if we can make this smaller. All right, so now my, okay, so now I'm going to look at the next one. And here I want to put my x squared plus x minus 6 on the dividend. And my divisor is x plus 3. So x into x squared. That would just be x. That gives me x squared plus 3x. And remember, I am subtracting, so these cancel. Remember, I am subtracting here. So x minus 3x gives me a negative 2x minus 6. So how do I get from x to negative 2x? Well, that would be minus 2. Negative 2x times x is negative 2x minus 6. If I subtract, cancel, cancel, done. Okay, so that is a 0. That means my answer is x minus 2. Alrighty. We're running out of time. Okay. So, 1 into 8x squared. That would be 8x. So 8x times x is 8x squared. And then 8x times a negative 1 is a negative 8x. Remember, I want to subtract, which means this is actually plus. So that would be 10x minus 3. X into 10x, that would be plus 10. So 10 times x is 10x, and then minus 10. Okay, so when I subtract, this is actually add, I end up with a positive 7. That number right there is my remainder. So since it is positive, I'm going to do plus 7 over whatever that divisor is, x minus 1. And so that is actually my full answer. We're going to do one more of those quickly. So x into x squared, so that would just be x. That would give me x squared plus 3x. I subtract. That's going to give me a negative 1x minus 6. And that would be negative 1. So negative 1x minus 3. Cancel, cancel. That's going to give me a negative 3, which means negative 3 over x plus 3. You're going to have to do the last two on your own. Have a great